Irish guy and right. So in today's video, I'm going to take a look at every Premier League club and find each team's new signing who is going to flop. I mean, last year I said Jesse Lingard would fail. I was absolutely correct. I also said that Sandro Martinez would be a South American Bilbo Baggins 3 months before he won the actual World Cup. So with this one, right, let's go. Arsenal, Kai Havertz. Look, Declan Rice won't be worth the money, but Kai Havertz, I think everybody knows that he's going to be an obvious flop. I know some people think that Mikel Arteta choosing to play him in central midfield is complete and utter genius, but no. I'm sorry, I have seen enough of Havertz in the Premier League, and I've been so underwhelmed. Mikel Arteta confuses me. He literally embarrassed and exiled his former teammate and friend Mesut Ozil because he was too languid and lazy. Well, 4 years later, and he's buying someone who's more laid back than the bathroom mat. Sorry, but Havertz at the Emirates is going to be one big mess, and trust me, by Christmas those Arsenal goblins on the internet are going to be screaming for the club to get rid. Speaking about the German, as if he's just been found drowning mice in a restaurant toilet. Aston Villa, Nicolo Zaniolo. I really thought Aston Villa had done good business in the transfer window, right up until Unai Emery decided to bring Nicolo Zaniolo through the door. Some posh egotistical brat who probably has his own private barber handcuffed to the bath in his house. For the last 2 years, Zaniolo has been an absolute villain. A talented Italian winger, sure, and he scored the winner for Roma in the Euro Conference League final, but then he started to demand a monster huge salary, was then banished to Turkey via Galatasaray, where, to be fair, he did score 5 goals in 10 matches, the most prolific 6 months of his career. But I mean, he was playing against toothless fullbacks who were about as defensively solid as a jar of margarine with dead ants floating on the top. I just think Aston Villa signing this problem child, it's just an unnecessary headache. He is going to show the work rate of a sleep-deprived slug, will probably spend on average 3 hours a week whining on the phone to his agent about how Birmingham is just like that town off the hills of Vice. And I'm telling you now, by January the 1st, Emery is going to be looking to get rid. Bournemouth, Justin Kluivert. Justin Kluivert is the Dutch Tom Ince, a young up-and-coming winger who was showered with praise and hype at an early age just because of who their daddy was. Price of Ince was literally offered a move to Inter Milan at 22. Nah, he's instead been passed around Crystal Palace, Hull, Nottingham Forest, Derby County, Huddersfield Town, Stoke, Luton Town, Reading and Watford. Sounds like the dullest interrail of your life. And similarly, Kluivert. 5 years ago, he was going to follow in his daddy's footsteps and sign for Barcelona. Everyone was so hyped by this kid. Yeah, it turns out his entire life has just been one big lie. He's after failing at Roma, Leipzig, Nice and Valencia. I know he's still only 24, and it will be weird to see a Champions League winning superstar sitting in the Bournemouth lounge, tucking into a pint of ice cream with Max Aarons' mum. Honestly, last season I actually met a Bournemouth player's dad, Jack Stevens. An ordinary, lovely man. So make no mistake about it, amongst the other parents, then Patrick is going to be seen as an elite celebrity. Forget the cereal box. He's the real Special K. Boy, his son, I reckon he's going to be sitting on Amdouni Areola's bench all season long before next summer being sold to Sparta Rotterdam. Brentford, Mark Flekken. Brentford don't often make howlers in the transfer market, but I mean, they have now. Mark Flekken, to be fair, is in a good moment in his career. He's 30 years old, played 4 times for Hojlund last year after doing really well with Freiburg. But I'm sorry, he's replacing David Raya in net. A legit Spanish international superstar. I just reckon this man is going to show the wrist strength of a gingerbread man. He'll concede some really stupid goals and will actually be dropped by mid-November with ex-Lazio goalie Thomas Krakusha taking the #1 shirt. Sorry, Mark. Brighton, Igor, Julio. I know. You probably all think that it's sacrilege for me to tip any Brighton signing to be a flop.
Oh, Brighton don't miss!
Well, they will this season. In comes Igor Julio on a £17 million deal from Fiorentina. He's a 25-year-old Brazilian centre-back, and considering Brighton's luck in the transfer market, you're probably all expecting him to be a future Thiago Silva. He's a guy whose current wealth and success can be credited to a popular energy drink. And no, I'm not talking about Prime, which I can only imagine just tastes like sugary monkey piss. No, Igor Julio joined Red Bull's youth academy, then eventually goes on to join Red Bull Salzburg. He owes everything to this drinks company. He's probably so indebted to the Red Bull brand that he probably pours a can of it into his morning bowl of Frosties. Yeah, he's probably gonna have less teeth than Shane McGowan. But imagine playing football in Austria and hearing that the opposition of a centre-back called Igor in defence. You'd be imagining some gruesome goblin who's got Frankenstein's knob in his pocket. If he had just gone with his middle name and called himself Julio dos Santos, then he would sound like a luxury Samba superstar. I reckon he'll be rotting on the bench for Premier League games. Roberto De Zerbi will just play him in the Europa League, where I think without regular domestic football, he'll look rusty, out of shape, sloppy, will get caught out on the ball for at least one European game, and will be made to look like he's got bowling balls for feet. hideous. Burnley, Zeki, Amdouni. Burnley have signed a lot of players this summer, but Zeki Amdouni is their marquee buy, right? £15 million paid the Swiss club Lausanne Sport for an exciting 22-year-old forward who has scored 5 goals in 5 games for Switzerland. A bit like how Rasmus Hojlund has 6 in 6 for Denmark. Then yeah, footballers with a 1-in-1 record at international level are very in vogue right now. This man has had frightening consistency in his career. He's only had 6 seasons so far, but he scored 10 goals in the league, 11 goals in the league, 12 goals in the league, and 12 goals in the league. Last season he scored 22 in all competitions for Basel. These stats are great, but I still think he'll score about 4 goals for Burnley all season long. Chelsea, Cristiano Nkunku. Chelsea have also signed so many players this summer. At least one of them will horrifically flop. Ask me 6 weeks ago, and I would have picked Nicholas Jackson, but to be fair, this ex-Villarreal newbie has looked pretty dangerous in pre-season, although in the Premier League, he has just looked like the Senegalese Timo Werner. All pace, but with the composure of a blind mouse. But I think Cristiano Nkunku will be an injury-riddled Chelsea disaster flop. Sure, he was a quality striker for RB Leipzig. Yeah, so was Werner. And yet he just looked like a blonde, blue-eyed zombie in West London. Nkunku has already flopped at one big club, failing to crack it amongst the stars of PSG. And now at Chelsea, he's still yet to make his actual competitive debut due to injury. And considering this is a deal wrapped up 9 months ago, then he's not a Pochettino signing, and I think the manager is going to be confused on where to actually play him. Up front, number 10 on the wing. It's going to be a season of injury and confusion, and I'm going to call it. He's going to score less than 10 Premier League goals. Crystal Palace, Matheus Franca. Sometimes transfers are too good to be true. Crystal Palace fighting off competition from Europe's elite clubs to wrap up a £20 million deal for Flamengo's Brazilian playmaker wonder kid, 19-year-old Matheus Franca. It reminds me of when Swansea somehow signed teenage midfield superstar Renato Sanchez on loan from Bayern Munich. There's a guy who was Golden Boy winner the previous year, voted the best young superstar in European football, so to see him wind up in Wales, people were expecting him to be so head and shoulders above his teammates, and in the end, he was just outshunned by Sam Kluivert and Tom Carroll, and similarly Franca. Despite the absolutely sickening levels of technique and skill, I think he's going to struggle to adapt to English football, and will barely start any matches in Roy Hodgson's 11, before, next summer, just getting loaned out to some team in Portugal. Honestly, by Christmas, the man's going to be so terrified of snow, and will just be repulsed at being offered bacon sandwiches for breakfast. Honestly, for the next 40 years of his life, he's going to have nightmares about whether spoons. Everton, Youssef Chermiti. So, Youssef Chermiti is supposed to be Everton's saviour. A Portugal under-19 international striker born in 2004. So young, he literally played academy football with a club named after Pauletta. I mean, I remember watching this ex-PSG striker playing for Portugal at Euro 2004. Now he's literally on some football club's badge. I mean, I hope he gave them his consent, because otherwise, it's about as creepy as sniffing your mum's hair while she sleeps. But listen, Chermiti has done nothing in the sport so far. He scored 3 goals for Sporting Lisbon last season. 3. And apparently that warrants a £15 million transfer fee. It reminds me of last summer when Reims were demanding that Newcastle United paid him close to £40 million for young striker Hugo Ekitike after just a 10-goal season in France. Again, the previous season, he scored just 3 goals in Denmark. This is a panic buy. Everton are in desperate need of goals, so Sean Dyche placing such a little pressure on the shoulders of a little boy who probably still wears SpongeBob pajamas? Nah, I'm gonna call it. I don't think Chermiti will score a single Premier League goal all season long. Not a single one. We're looking at the Portuguese Francis Jeffers. And if you don't know who that is, you don't want to know. Fulham Raul Jimenez. Is this it? Is this really a Fulham replacing Alexander Mitrovic with? Mitrovic is a man who scored 109 goals in 190 league games for Fulham. 2 seasons ago, he had a 43-goal season for the club, but I'm sorry, he is 6th in the club's all-time top scorer list. And right now, there's still only one person alive in the world who has scored more goals for the club than Mitrovic. And so you replace him with Raul Jimenez, a 32-year-old pasta striker who didn't score a single goals for Wolves last season. Ever since banging his head, his footballing talent has been soaked up and maybe replaced by new undiscovered skill. I don't know. Maybe he's now suddenly world class at chess, or is now the Mexican Spider-Man just fighting crime at night. I don't know, but he's not a goal scorer anymore. And yes, will score less than 4 goals all season long. Liverpool, Wataru, Endo. Listen, Liverpool have only made 3 signings. I don't think Alexis McAllister will flop. I don't think Dominic Szoboszlai will flop. I think they will both be class. Absolute top class in midfield. So the final person that I have to choose is Wataru Endo, a 30-year-old defensive midfielder signed from Stuttgart. I don't think he'll drastically fail, but I don't think he's bought to be a starter. I think Liverpool are going to go out there and sign a proper defensive midfielder, meaning that Endo will mostly spend this season rotting on the bench. He's going to be the defensive midfield version of Takumi Minamino, just kind of forgotten on the sidelines. So he won't be a complete disaster, but he'll be whatever Minamino was. Luton Town, Ross Barkley. I have always believed in Ross Barkley. Even when I loaded Aston Villa recently, I thought he was going to be an excellent buy for them, especially when he scored in a 7-2 win over Liverpool on his debut. But in reality, ever since moving to Chelsea 6 years ago, when he was speaking about wanting to become a world-class midfielder, he has been a rotten lump of cabbage. Last season while at Nice, he was just an unfit lump of fudge who the manager didn't even want, so to wind up at Luton at just 29. He was on £200,000 a week at Chelsea, so I sort of applaud him for taking, well, a tenth of that wage at Luton Town instead of still chasing the cash overseas. But still, it's going to be the most embarrassing season of his career because he no longer has the work ethic or drive to even get into the Luton Town starting 11. And once this transfer fails, and this former wonderkid and England international will probably just be resigned to fetching a rubbish job in the MLS, probably just joining Rooney at DC, Man City, Jeremy Doku. Look, not many players fail at Manchester City whilst Pep Guardiola is in charge, so I'm half expecting to be proved wrong, but a lot of them start slowly at least. And I just can't work out why the club have paid £60 million to sign Jeremy Doku from Rennes. Sure, he was a teenage superstar when he blitzed Europe at Euro 2020 on the Belgian wing, but he was just a one summer fling who every elite club wanted to sign, only to then look at his actual stats in France that he had a 2-goal debut season with Rennes, then followed it up with a 1-goal season. Yes, last season was the best of his career, but it was still only 7 goals and 4 assists in 35 games. Overall, his career stats are absolute garbage. 18 goals and 18 assists in 133 career games. I know he's an explosive winger who relies on pace, and will be something different for City, I suppose, but I reckon he'll just be a £60 million bench warmer who will score 1 Premier League goal all season, probably in a 7-0 battering of Luton. But that's it. Yes, he's a quality dribbler, but his stats in a Manchester City shirt will be a complete and utter embarrassment. If you're sticking him in your fantasy league team, then comment down below, because then I can see who really does have the intelligence of a chunky meatloaf pie. Man United, Rasmus Hojlund. Look, this sounds worse than it is. I have to pick a Manchester United flop, and they've only signed 4 players. I think Andre Onana and Mason Mount will be quality buys, and Johnny Evans seems like too easy an answer. So I'm going to say £72 million, Rasmus Hojlund will struggle in his debut season. In the same way Erik ten Hag asked way too much of Wout Weghorst, honestly, how did that man play a full season's worth of games in just 5 months? And a 20-year-old Hojlund, after just a 9-goal season with Atalanta in Serie A, he is not ready to be the main man at Old Trafford. I think ten Hag is going to throw this little boy into the deep end, and he will play sort of well, show some nice touches and look semi-dangerous, but when he's stuck at just 4 goals by Christmas, the pressure will build, the critics will come, especially when he's languishing 15 goals behind Erling Haaland through no fault of his own. He's just going to look very underwhelming, and he'll be dropped by early February, and he'll just wind up with a 7-goal debut season in the Premier League. Just a bit meh. Newcastle, Tino Livramento. Newcastle look like they've done really good business in the transfer window so far. I'm not sure any of them are really going to flop, but maybe if I have to choose, then Newcastle now have a right back called Valentino Livramento. You know what's weird? It's not even their first right back called Valentino L, even inside the last 3 years. Remember when Steve Bruce dragged in Lazaro from Inter Milan on loan? Well, here's another one. Tino, who was in the Chelsea Academy from 2009 until 2021. Then he went to Southampton, looked excellent at the start, was linked with a £40 million move to Everton back when they thought they had money, and then he crushed his ACL and has barely played since. Clearly he's seen as the eventual heir to Kieran Trippier, but I don't know. Considering he's missed about 18 months through injury already, do you not think his body would be screaming to play football games? He's nearly 21 years old and has played just 35 senior games of men's football in his life. He'd have been better suited to staying at Southampton in the Championship. He's a £40 million buy from the Saints. He's eligible to play for Scotland and Portugal. In the back of his mind, he probably wants to have Roberto Martinez, Steve Clark and Gareth Southgate fighting over his passport, but it's going to be so frustrating when just collecting cobwebs on the Newcastle bench. Honestly, it's going to be a boring year. Nottingham Forest, Gonzalo Montiel. I'm surprised that Nottingham Forest have signed Gonzalo Montiel on a season-long loan from Sevilla. A World Cup winning Argentine fullback, yes, but there's a few reasons I think he's going to fail. Firstly, he's having a summer from hell. I mean, the reason Sevilla have dumped him, let's just say this. Google Montiel and police. That should tell you all you need to know. So aside from being a distracted, worried mess on the phone to his lawyer 6 hours a day, he's also been affected by the World Cup curse. He was the one who scored the winning penalty kick against France and instantly meant he'd completed football. But I remember the last left back who did that, Fabio Grosso, who also scored a World Cup winning penalty against France. And clearly fame and success went to his head because he just became a nothing left back for Lyon and then Juventus. And similarly, Montiel, he's arriving at Forest under an absolute cloud. I reckon he's going to be absolutely rubbish. Sheffield United, Vinicius Souza. Vinicius Souza has a slick, dazzling football name. I'll give him that. But where he was once a highly rated Flamengo wonder kid, even earlier this summer, apparently Man City were linked with him. Well, he's wound up with Sheffield United, and again, I think he's going to struggle in his debut year in England in an under-equipped team who are just going to get battered every week. So yeah, sorry Vinny, but you're going to be a flop. Tottenham, Ashley Phillips. Maybe this is unfair, but Ashley Phillips, an 18-year-old centre-back who's joined Tottenham for £2 million, he just gives me Phil Jones vibes because he's a teenage centre-back star arriving from Blackburn Rovers after just 8 championship games. I think he's barely going to play. This move has come too soon for him. He'll play less than 5 Premier League games. He'll get bullied when given a rare start in the FA Cup, embarrassed against someone like Wycombe Wanderers. He'll just be this season's answer to Jed Spence, just eating cookies on the bench before getting a deadline day January loan move to somewhere weird like Belgium. Honestly, sorry AP, but you're in for a rough year. West Ham, Konstantino Mavropanos. This is surely one of the most underwhelming transfers of the summer. I thought Konstantinos Mavropanos, after bursting onto the scene as a teenage centre-back for Arsenal over 5 years ago, before then disappearing, I thought he was lost forever. He seemed to disappear as soon as Arsene Wenger left the building, as if the Greek defender was trapped in his suitcase. To prove how I thought he was lost to the world, this was me in June 2020.
Konstantinos Mavropanos. That's a footballer whose name you will never hear again after this tweet.
I was wrong. Well, he's been at Stuttgart for the last 3 years, and yet he's now a £25 million signing for West Ham. This was their alternative to Harry Maguire. This reminds me of when Liverpool signed Ozan Kabak, Wolves' Matt Doherty. It's not looking good for Matt Doherty. Back in January, it looked like his career was in a dream place. He had actually ripped up his Tottenham contract to get a move to Atletico Madrid to become the next Kieran Trippier. Now, in the blink of an eye, he's now back where he started, has spent the last 2 Premier League matches rotting on the bench. So Gary O'Neill clearly thinks he's about as much use as banana pie. That's the trouble with leaving Wolves in 2020, because they've since replaced him with the former Barcelona defender, meaning that now that Doherty has returned, he's just out in the cold. Anyway, that's the video. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Who is going to flop? Who is going to fail? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like, and as always, I'll talk to you in a while.